welcome back to the Unwritten Earth Symposium podcast. I am here with my good friend Epadiah Ravachol to talk about games and play and design and all of the associated things.
And I'm here with my good friend Nathan Paoletta to talk about all of the above.
And perhaps even more.
And more, yeah. Hey!
Hey.
I've been informed to say hello from one D. Vincent Baker.
Oh. Is this our name drop segment that we decided not to do?
Well, I mean, he's downstairs right now.
Oh.
Like, they were over for coffee. We often do coffee Saturday mornings, which is when, like, we also often record on Saturdays. And I got up and I was like, well, I'm walking away because I have to go record a podcast. And Vincent was like, make sure you tell Nathan I say hello. Oh. And I said, I will do it on air.
Well, hello, Vincent.
Mm-hmm.
And I assume.
Oh, no, actually, Elliot's there.
And hello, Elliot.
But Meg is at Dreamation, which is occurring right now as we record. Dreamation, maybe we'll talk about Dreamation a little bit later in the show, but kind of a formative convention for the indie game design scene that you and I came out of, or one of a group of formative
part of that constellation, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, what do you know? We already have some congruence with some of the topics that we have chosen to talk about for this show.
I'm getting the yellow Skype thing, which is usually just saying the connection's not the best, but my internet connection's fine, so I don't know what. I
do like how we're in a moment where this is, a little, behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
We use Skype because we were using Zencastr, which is, a lot of people use. It's a browser-based recording, situation. When we first started doing 200 a day, and then we just started having problems and having connection issues, and I don't remember exactly if there was like a precipitating event or just like whatever, but
it's almost a decade ago, so who would remember?
But that also is like a month, it's a subscription based thing, which is fine if it works, but when it stops working, you're like, what am I paying for? Anyway, I guess I think what happened was I was like, I learned about the software that I use to record, which is called Audio Hijack, which is good Mac software. And I was like, well, I could just buy that, and it's not very expensive. And then we don't have to keep paying the subscription fee, and Skype is free, and we started using it just to test it out, and it's been fine. We complain about it because it auto updates and like wants to have AI in it and stuff. It's like pretty much every other time I open Skype, there's a group chat that I've been added to that's about Bitcoin.
Yeah, some sort of crypto.
that like has since been deleted, so it's just like a string instead of a username that then I have to
get rid of yourself.
I have to leave it, a group that I was never in. Anyway, so that stuff's all pretty stupid, but the actual recording part is fine, and we've come all the way around to where now when I have calls with someone and it's like, we can do whatever you want to do. We can do Zoom, we can do Google Meet, which are what most people are doing, one of those two, or Skype. And I get like, oh, is Skype still a thing?
Right, yes.
Until it stops being a thing, it's the workflow. We just open it, we do the thing. So far, it's been working.
Yeah.
So technology.
So welcome to our Technocast.
Technocast, where we talk about the technology of podcasts.
The pod. The pod. we get spam mail for people who are like, yo, bro, I heard the pod. You want to grow?
Yeah.
No.
No. Oh, this is turning into plus expenses. We should.
Let's do our homework.
A game that either one that you currently or one upon looking through things jumps out at you. A game that you want someone else to run for you.
I can see where your motivation comes from here. Yeah, all right.
Like kind of the idea of like you're presented with some choices, and one of them you're like, I hadn't thought about it, but yeah, that's something I really want to play. But like someone else is bringing it to you.
Yes. All right. That's good. That is good.
And we're back.
So now we're picking games that we want someone else to run for us.
My spin on it specifically was to finding a game where I was like, oh, I want to play that.
Okay, yeah.
In the context of like with someone else who knows it, so I can kind of learn it, like so I can get the experience of it with that knowledge.
We like to write and sell books. Well, sorry, let me take that back. We like to write and produce books.
Speak for yourself. Writing sucks.
Okay, yeah, that's true. None of this is fun. None of this is fun. Look, we have to sell books in order to eat. Right. So there's that. And then Nathan enjoys putting books together. I enjoy writing them, which is why we make a team.
Why this thing is happening.
But the tradition is as much an oral tradition than anything else, right? Like a lot of role-playing games, I'm not throwing any shade here. There are a lot of really good role-playing games out there where if you read the text, it's very hard to figure out, especially if you've come to it new, what actually is happening. But if somebody's going to hold your hands and run a game for you and get you through it, then you're equipped to read other texts. Going to conventions and just getting involved in games is a great way to learn about new games, but also just like a great way to learn like about a game that you may not be able to learn about just by reading it or whatever.
It's complicated by the fact that I think for most games the emergent qualities are where the juice is. And it's hard to forecast some of the emergent qualities
without some experience.
And just reading the text or having. Sometimes you start to see it like if you read like someone's like play report or you know, or there's a really good example that kind of illustrates how the pieces work together. But yeah, that feeling of like, oh, that's what this is all, that's what this game is doing. That usually is a live experience.
Yeah, it's I would say famously difficult problem explaining what a role-playing game is to someone who has no experience. But that was actually kind of what our last homework was about. Yeah. Should we dive into yours and then I'll get into how I interpreted this?
Right. I was again browsing through my shelves and stacks as my first pass, and I expected to also go to my digital library because I think, as I said in the last one, I've been pretty focused on my books because I've been working on the second design zine. So I've been doing a lot of my own library picking. So I'm feeling very familiar with it right now. But I was like, I'll take a look. But then I'm shuffling through some books. And then I revealed the next one on the stack and went, oh yeah, no, this one.
Yeah.
That's why I picked it, because I had that was the experience I was looking for of the like, I'm walking down the line, I'm looking at the menus, or I'm looking at a schedule of like games and be like, which one do I want to play in this session? And then I see this title and I go, oh, that one.
Yeah.
This is not intentional. It just so happens that we happen to be going back to the Brain Trust, our composer and friend of the show, Will Yobst, with their game Black Mass.
Yeah. Oh, that's a lovely cover.
Yeah, it's a banger. Black Mass, a game about seeking and finding in the woods of Salem, which was, one of Will's earlier projects. 2019 is the date on this one. Full disclosure, there's a thanks credit in here to me because I helped with some feedback on it. Shell has a thanks in this. Like it's a so
it's a family production.
It's a family production, but I have not played it.
Okay, good. I mean, that's not necessary.
Well, that was the other thing. I was like, there were a couple where I'm like, oh, I would play that. Like I would pick that, but I have played it. Like Polaris was on my short list. I was like, oh, because I have played Polaris, but if someone was doing it at a convention, I'd be like, ooh, like I haven't done that. Like I'd like to go back, but finding one that I haven't actually sat down and played was like, okay, this is where my heart is for this homework. So Black Mass, it's the 1690s Massachusetts witch hysteria. There are two characters. Their names are Catherine and Lydia. Okay. And each of them has personas, and you play a persona of each.
Is this a 2-player game then?
No, it's a group game. It's 3 to 5 with a proctor, kind of GM role.
Proctor's a good name for a GM role for that game. I like it.
So part of this, right, is I would love to play with someone who knows the game so that I have a better handle on explaining this character player split.
Right, yes.
Because that is what's very interesting and also a little hard for me to conceptualize how that actually works in play. So the two characters, Catherine and Lydia, have multiple personas. Each player plays one Lydia persona and one Catherine persona.
Oh, okay. All right.
So they have as many as there are players.
Right.
So if there are 3 players, then there'll be 6 personas, 3 each. Yeah, and they get mixed and matched. Because basically you pick from a menu of pre-built personas.
And each player is only responsible for one persona per character, so it's just 2 personas, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. There was a combinatorial nightmare that I saw coming that doesn't exist, and that's good.
So the structure of this game is that you have a mode of play that you pick as a group. October, December, or February. It's kind of telling you the witchy genre that you're going to be playing in.
Okay.
So October is bubbling cauldrons, broomsticks, high witchiness. December for eerie exploration and historical fidelity. And February is hard horror and bloodstained snow.
That's lovely.
You pick that, and then you're not progressing through seasons. You're picking, this is our story takes place in this month, basically.
Yeah.
And that tells you kind of the tone, and that's kind of, it's also like PG-13R.
Right. And it's evocative. It's lovely.
Oh, yeah. The language in here, Will did a really good job with all the language and everything. The unfolding story is guided by a tarot card spread that you build as you play. And then as a player, you also get a little stack of cards. Those end up being what you go to when you want to like do a thing. And there's different categories of action for doing a thing. And your personas also have their own essentially special moves that are unique to them. So each combo of personas is going to have a different kind of set of things that they're particularly interested in. They're particularly interested in putting into the story, or particularly interested in you looking for to pull from the story. There's a little bit of fictional framing. You basically start the game with Catherine and Lydia in the woods outside the town, and the story is the journey through the woods to something, and then the something at the end is the Black Mass. And so the events of the second phase, the main play phase, inform the nature of the final phase, which is the Black Mass, and like what they actually find at the end. How does the story end, right? And then a lot of the design is in the personas, their descriptions, and how they interact. They have questions where one half of it asks the question, or not questions, but are they questions? Questions or statements that are on the sheets. They're statements. So that when you get to the Black Mass, you have a statement that's on your sheet based on your personas that you are reading into the situation. So they're all set up, so they're all half of a sentence and the other half of the sentence, and they all can combine. So like that kind of stuff. That's where a lot of the like texture of the game is. So yeah, it's very cool. I'm particularly interested in playing it with someone who's like, let me show you how this game works. Like, I'm excited to bring this game to you, right? Both to get a handle on the player character split, because it is really interesting and evocative, but I do have trouble visualizing how I will interact with it in play.
Yeah, I have questions, and I don't even know if I can vocalize the question.
Right, I can't quite articulate, like I'm game, like I want to try it. But I also kind of want to have a model to bounce off of. There's 2 characters. I'm playing part of each of them. You're hopping in and out of them during the like rounds.
Right.
There's a semi-mechanical way to like push that if you're not doing it yourselves. So you'll be kind of taking over one of the characters through the lens of your persona of them in any given scene that you're in.
Yeah, it's fun because it's like it's exploring an area that role-playing games can explore that like it would be more difficult for a book or a movie to explore, right? It's both interesting because it's doing that, this idea of playing the different personas, and also like difficult to conceptualize because there isn't like a ton of media that's doing it, right? Like, because it's new.
This is harnessing one of the things that role-playing in particular can do.
Right.
And thus it's not
mirroring a different media.
It's not like describe everything like it's a scene in a movie.
Right.
Which is a great, I put that in a lot of my games. It's a great technique, but you're also importing how movies work when you do that.
Right.
And this is exploring how games with multiple people all in the moment together work, which is great. The closest analog in my experiences to this player character situation is how Bluebeard's Bride works, where there's one central character and you each play a fragment of their psyche. And that's kind of contemporaneous, I think, in terms of development. I don't know if those two games, I don't know design wise if they're mindfully in conversation, but they're kind of happening around the same time. Thematically they're similar, but there's something about the one character many players, which is like, okay, I get that, but the two characters many players is actually has more shifting to it that I want to see how it comes together, and I believe that it comes together, but I want to have someone show me how to do it well. Like yeah, so that's what popped out to me.
Do you have an arcane gem? Do you have like a thing that you want to just put your finger on as a...
Yeah, conceptually, there's a whole fractal series of gems around player character splits, right? So there's that.
A many-faceted gem, if you will.
Inside each facet are more facets. Yeah, this is kind of like the whole game. That way of framing tone is really, really compelling. The pick a month thing.
Yes. Yeah.
Because it doesn't change anything mechanically about the game. It's not like in October you play with these cards or you use these rules. But it is just a really evocative, easy, totally natural way both to
get the players on board,
get everyone on board, but also to tell the reader or the person running it, the proctor, hey, you have options. This game doesn't have to be this or this. It's built to be all of them, but you pick one at a time. And then there's some guidance for like, these are a continuum you can play, and I think they're intentionally spaced. So October, December, February, but like you could play November and January, and those are to be like kind of combining. You're sliding on the spectrum between a couple of those points. So that's a really clever little technique too.
It kind of relates a little bit to some stuff we got into last episode. This is more affordances than constraints, right? Saying here's the October game, bubbling cauldrons and very like fantasy witchy kind of thing, and here's the February game, blood on snow, like you said, and we're going to choose one. Choosing October then implies the constraint of not doing February, but it does it in a way that I think would avoid that problem of bringing up the thing you like. We're going to play this game, but we're not going to be super horrific, and then suddenly people are thinking about super horrific things to bring in. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's not a ban. Like it's not a lines and veils. Like we are not talking about this stuff.
Right.
It's more tone setting, get everyone on the same page, orientation thing.
Yeah, I dig it.
So Black Mass, game of seeking and finding. Will Jobst.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's I remember that coming out. I don't know if I have it. I might have it digital somewhere, but it doesn't matter. We don't all have to own all the games, right? Please tell me it's okay I don't own all the games.
The whole point of this exercise is that we can only have so many games.
Yes.
Can only play so many games, can only read so many games.
The grim math.
Yes. So a very fun revisit. Not a totally new visit because I have read it when I first got it. But looking forward to getting it to playing someday. What about yourself?
Well, mine is also not a totally new visit. I have in fact played my game. My spin on it. Looking through my games, I stumbled on this one, and it solved the question, but in a different way. Because I chose it because I myself have run this game in the past, and this is gonna sound brutal, and I don't mean it like this, but I'd love to inflict that on someone else so that I can enjoy it.
Is it Dread? Are you going to?
No, it's not Dread. No, I have played Dread. People have run it for me. There have been hundreds, maybe even thousands of Marvel role-playing games, right, over the years.
A multiverse of them, perhaps.
Yeah, a multiverse of them. This is the diceless one, but not the diceless one that uses cards. This is the Marvel Universe role-playing game. I'm holding it up for Nathan to see the cover.
It has Spider-Man on the cover.
This uses stones. This came out in the early aughts.
Yeah.
At the time when it came out, I was really into it. Something about it clicked in the back of my brain with superhero things. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about it then, right? You're playing superheroes, obviously. You can play the pre-generate heroes that they have, or you can make your own. And why wouldn't you want to make your own? That's what most of the fun is. Oh my God, I just got to share this Wolverine because this is.
Oh yeah! Wow.
Bear. It's a Wolverine with his jacket unzipped, so you see his bare chest, and he's making a little kissy face down at you. Well,
yep.
Okay, so basically, the way this game works is you have these stones. They're specifically red and white stones. The white stones represent your health. You can play this without stones, obviously, because you're just moving numbers from one thing to another. But it's fun with the stones, right?
Yeah.
Like it's very visual and evocative. The red stones are your energy. You're going to have a bunch of scores in what they call actions. These are powers or moves or whatever you want to call them. Actions is a perfectly fine thing. An example, let me pick a character here because we do have some like well-known characters. Let's do Captain America. Captain America has, for instance, one of his actions is close combat. Pretty obvious. This is where you're not doing any like range combat. He's got a 7 in it. He can, I believe, if I remember the rule, I reread the rules for the homework, but like it's still a little iffy in my head. There's something about the way the rules are written that I'm remembering something that I haven't found yet in the rules. So I don't know if it's a way that we played that weren't by the rules, or it's hidden, or it's implied, because sometimes rules end up getting implied. But anyways, so he's got this 7, which means he can spend up to 7 points on his close combat. I think that's how that works. You spend your energy points. Those go away after you use them. And then you regenerate a certain number based on what your health is. So your red stones are your energy, your white stones are your health. You spend your energy points, and you get back, like Captain America has a 4 health and a 12 energy, so you can spend up to 4 points, and then the next panel, everything's broken up into pages and panels. The next page, I think he gets back 4 red or whatever. So it has that kind of nice, like, in this zone, you can do things and it doesn't really drain you at all. But if you push yourself, then you start to like, you know, you have like these moments where you might push yourself beyond the point. So the game has no randomness in it. The players are spending these stones while the GM, I don't know if the GM has a clever name like editor or something like that. No, GM, just GM.
Marvel Master.
Yeah. The GM is allocating their stones in secret. They do that first, and then you allocate your stones. You could talk amongst yourselves or whatever, and then everything's revealed. So you're trying to kind of guess what the GM's putting forth, and you're trying to beat that. And it's a risk
reward. It's a
yeah. If you spend under your health, then you're fine next round. But if you spend over your health, then you're going to have to take some time recovering. But that might be what's necessary.
Yeah.
Because like again, that Captain America has 12 energy and 4 health. If he spends 4, next round he gets 4 back. Fine. If he spends 6, next round he gets 4 back. Now he only has 10 health or 10 energy.
There's some attrition if you keep bidding. It's you don't want to overbid because then you're just losing yourself resources for no reason.
Yeah.
You're trying to guess, like what's my optimum. Yeah. There's no reason not to bid that lowest number. So it's like, okay.
Yeah. And like you're working with the team. So like you can definitely do things like, hey, I've been overspending. What if I just do this little thing that I can do? And you guys step forward for a bit, and I can kind of, regenerate. Yeah. I can come back a little bit. And that really appeals to me for superhero action of a type.
That kind of like Avengers-y team-based stuff, yeah.
I remember there being like for instance, Wolverine's claws, which just give you a bonus. It doesn't cost you any points to use or whatever. And those being like really nice because you're not spending points.
Yeah.
So like as far as balance, whatever, it's a superhero game. It doesn't matter. There's some neat things about damage because you take damage, it's based on the number of stones put against you and how much they exceed your defense, right? And if that amount exceeds your health, let me see if I can word this correctly because it is a little kind of confusing. You lose health based on that, right? So let's use a concrete example. Let's say you've put 4 in your defense and somebody has done 6 against you.
Sure.
That's 2 over your defense. For every 1, 2, or 3 stones over your defense, you lose 1 health, right? And then again, you lose another health, that kind of thing. So it doesn't exactly equate to every stone over your health, whatever.
There's like breakpoints, like up to this, you'll lose 1. Up to this, you'll lose 2.
Yeah, exactly. But then there's this other thing where, again, your health is 4. Let's say they do 4 over, right? Like 4 over your defense.
Sure.
Now that is equal to or more than your health. You, as the player, can decide, I've been knocked unconscious. You take none of the damage. You spend a number of panels or pages or whatever unconscious based on the number of things that are doing. I think you might even regenerate during that point.
Okay.
So it's this nice superhero thing where like, yeah, I've been captured. That's fine. It takes I need to fight until my very last hit point, that like maybe even sacrifice my life out of it, right? Like you can just fall unconscious.
That's cool. It's like you can basically, if you're evenly matched, right, quote unquote, then it's a little bit of the like trying to get an edge so that you can get that big hit in. And if you're totally overmatched, then you have this narrative out of like, okay, well, I've been taken out. I'm not losing any resources because of it, and now we're changing the game state so that there's like a new fun thing to do.
Yes, exactly.
When I wake up.
And I believe the NPCs can do that as well. So there's like a lot of whatever, just knock them unconscious.
Right.
There's no reason to kill them, that kind of thing. Yeah. So like that, I mean, I'm going to already just say that's like a little bit of my arcane gem there. It's like having like a good reason to just volunteer to be knocked unconscious. And another sort of nice thing about how they structure that is that you can't be knocked unconscious by a thing that
wouldn't really hurt you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it has to be like a certain size in order to do it. So a couple of reasons why I want someone else to run it. Number one, I want to play a stretchy boy.
Ooh, a stretchy boy.
My favorite superpowers are stretchies, which, Mr. Fantastic being the Marvel version of that, but also like Plastic Man, Elongated Man, even stretchies like Machine Man, which like where he just has these extendo arms.
Sure.
Or Stretch Armstrong. Anyways, I love the stretchy people, and I would love to play a stretchy character. So one, boom, I want that. But number two, like I said, I had run this, and the bookkeeping of the stones for multiple NPCs behind a screen before it wore on me. I was not having as much fun playing this game. I think it was a combination of like, I don't want to blame the game, like, because I'm not here to do anything like that. But I was the one, like we were just talking about with yours, where I was the one bringing the game and teaching it to people. And so I had to be all sides of the battle all the time.
Oh, right. Because you're like, I need to do my stuff. And now, okay, here's how you do that. And here's how you do that.
And you're leaving this resource on the table, and you don't want to do that. And you're trying to like pay attention to all that. And then you're also trying to pay attention to it to the point where you're like, that this guy has this vulnerability and you have that power. Like, are you not putting that together, or do you not know how the rules work? Like, I don't know how to make that, so anyways, I just remember, and this is like 20 years ago now, but playing it, having fun, but finding that part of it a drag. And I'm like, I would love to play this game as a superhero with one person, and also just kind of like doing that fun teamwork stuff that we were just talking about, and let someone else deal with it. Now, I'm willing, on my side of the equation, I'm willing to learn these rules and bring that to bear so that they don't have to teach it to me and my fellow players. So I would alleviate that burden.
It's a more rewarding system knowledge game where if you have it internalized, so you don't need to like spend brain on wait, how does this work again? And like doing math all the time. Like if you just have it internalized where you're like, okay, so I move the stone here. Like you just kind of know what all that stuff is. You get to just quote unquote, you get to just play. And that's where it like starts to everything starts to like pop when it's like, we're not spending as much time on, and this is true for many games. We're not spending time looking things up or teaching and learning. We're spending time playing.
Yeah, I think you bring up a very good point. And I want to say there's nothing unique about this situation to this game. There are many games that are like this.
But this one is mine.
Yes. But there have been times in the past where I've collected like a specific group of players and I said, I would like to play this game. I think you would enjoy this game, but I will not run it unless you learn the rules. Like, I don't need everyone to learn the rules, but I need at least half of you to come to the game ready to teach the other half how to play it, because like I'm going to have a lot of concerns on my end running it. And there are people out there, like I'm willing to meet someone that way in a game. And there are definitely other players there. Just be upfront about it, right? Like, just be aware of it. So Marvel Universe role-playing game. I believe in the timeline, it's the 4th Marvel game.
I'll put it in the show notes so we can see which one we're talking about. But it's before. Oh boy.
Right. They all have like similar names.
It's before the one before the current one, right?
Yeah.
Or is it before the one before the one before the current one?
It's the one before the one before the current okay, hold on.
It's the one before the Margaret Weis Productions one.
Okay, so here we go.
Okay.
There's Marvel Superheroes, which is the one that like we all kind of know as Phase Rip. And then there's the Marvel Superhero Adventure game, which is the one that has the cards that's like based on the Saga system, which the Dragonlance one did.
So that was a TSR one.
Yeah. And then the Marvel Universe, and that's followed by Marvel Heroics, which is the Cortex Plus.
That's the Cortex one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then now there is
there's a current one.
Which I think Marvel did in-house or something like that.
The Marvel Multiverse role-playing game.
Okay.
Is the current.
So this is just the Marvel universe. We just deal with one universe in this one.
Yeah, I guess the current one is from Marvel, is in-house.
Yeah. This one, I think I don't know if it's in-house. Okay, so the Wikipedia lists the game designers. I couldn't find the designers in the book itself.
Oh, really?
Like their credits include the CEO and General Counsel of Marvel Entertainment and VP of Human Resources and Director of Operations and the Editor-in-Chief. But they don't mention anybody who's designed the game that I could tell.
Yeah, the Wikipedia has the designers.
Yeah.
Dan Gilbert, Jeffrey Simons, Evan Jones, Bill Jamis, Mark Beasley.
Yeah, so it's a game I definitely have fond memories of, but also I was like, well, that's it. Like I can't do this anymore. And I would dearly love if someone else. Well, I mean, I would if somebody else was like, "Hey, do you want to play Marvel Universe?" And I'd be like, "I'm there. Let me pull out my catalog of Stretchy Boys."
So, do you have a particular arcane gem?
So the stones themselves, I think, are a neat arcane gem with that caveat of like, if you can find some way to make the asymmetrical, where the amount of bookkeeping the players have to do is enough to keep them interested, but when the character is then handed over to the GM, that reduces down to a more bite-sized version of it, right? Which is that's a greater like in games with sort of character complexity. That's an interesting challenge that I think is fun to work.
Yeah.
Here are all the fun bits that players are going to want to hold on to because they get these edges here and there, and they get to do a lot of fun things, and they only have one character to worry about. But here's how we abstract all of that away so the GM can do it for a multitude of characters.
Yeah.
And I think that a few more tools like that would make the stones really, really work. But also, I love that unconsciousness thing, like just there's a lot of like little ways this game does things. Like your energy, the amount of energy you have is based on your health. That makes sense. But then you can play a character where it's based on your intelligence rather than your health, but that's asymmetrical in a certain way. Like the amount of energy you have is based on 3 times your health, but if you base it on your intelligence, it's only twice your intelligence. But that's fine. So it allows you to be like Professor X can still do things, you know, and anyways, lots of little neat things like that. But yeah, the arcane gems specifically are the stones and that like a reason to volunteer to go unconscious.
Yeah, you love to see it.
Lights out for my character because I don't want to take all this damage. So that was a fun homework. I think we're doing good with this. I mean, like I'm enjoying it.
I think we are naturally doing a pretty good job of surfacing our preferences in games or our experiences with games, at least.
Yeah.
We actually have very different playing the games with people backgrounds.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think we're kind of surfacing that through the homework, which is kind of fun.
We come out of 2 different traditions, if you will, and that are in dialogue with each other, but like it's different enough that it like when you pick up a game, even if I've heard of it, I'm like, oh right, that game, and that's a lot of fun.
And then I'm like, if I was 3 or 4 years older, I would have played the game you're talking about.
Yeah, okay, I see what you're getting at there, buddy.
Which isn't exactly what I'm trying to say, but more like generate. I guess
there is a generation gap there.
If I had an older sibling who was into games, they probably would have brought these like the games that you're talking about, like the Marvel games and stuff, like into my life. But because I was the older sibling, you know, it's like the stuff that I got into.
The ones,
which was like you know, White Wolf games and stuff is more in my like background DNA. Anyway,
no, I'm really enjoying that too. So next time for homework, we've got this slightly larger project, I think. Nathan and I are each going to take 70, 80, 90, aughts, 10s, 20s. Wow. 6 decades. 6 years. I'm going to take 73, 83, 93, 2003, 2013, 2023. Oh. Nathan's going to do 74, 84, 94, 2004, 2014, and 2024. We're gonna find not necessarily one game from each of those years.
That's the portfolio of find a game to talk about, and it has to be from one of these years. Yes. And ideally, we will end up with a little handful of like, here's a span of games that were all 10 years apart. Isn't that interesting? But then we'll pick one to go into. So we won't necessarily both have 6 games, but we'll, you know, maybe try to hit 2 to 3.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure how much work this is going to be. It could be like work, or it could be clicking around for a little bit. So we'll figure it out.
We're gonna have fun. That's gonna be our priority, is to have fun. And then so we're not gonna do a comprehensive look at each of these years, but those are the years that the sieve of years that come, you know, like that we're allowed to look at. And then we'll pick one from one of those years.
From that handful to dive into, So that is what we will do.
I think it'll be kind of fun to just see if I can pull from my collection one from each of those. I think I can.
I'm not sure. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
There is an interesting rhythm that we are getting into of like homework episodes. That's what most of the episode is about. And then if we do not do our homework, that means it is incumbent upon us to find something to talk about. Which is good.
Yeah.
Speaking of being excited about other people running games for us, the whole deal of playing and running games at conventions.
The whole deal. Yeah. I feel like throughout this podcast, over the many decades this podcast will run, I will repeat myself many, many times, and I'll just stop apologizing for it, and I'll just assume this is the first time you're listening.
Yeah, every day someone is born who's never listened to our podcast.
Oh my God. So one of the things that I discovered about myself as I slowly realized I was a game designer was how the design of my games changed the more and more I ran them at conventions.
Yes.
Catering the design to the experience of running them at conventions. Like this is just talking about the age gap thing. This is not necessarily a generational thing, but like the sort of promise to games in the beginning for me held this sort of this impossible ideal of a game that continued forever. The campaign that like you play for decades. I say impossible only like I know people have been playing games for decades or whatever, but like I'm mortal and I enjoy a variety of games, and I do not have an unlimited amount of time in my life to fill up with things that don't go away.
Other than a podcast.
Yeah. Other than a podcast. I can play a short campaign, but I can't play one of these decades-long campaigns and also another decade-long campaign in another game I want to play, and also another decade-long campaign in another game. I don't have that time. But that was the promise before I got into designing games. That was the holy grail of gaming. Even just Pendragon itself being a game where you spend decades searching for the holy grail. And then I got into game design, and in order to sell these games, I had to run them at conventions. And running them at conventions, like in the beginning with Dread, we thought, people aren't going to want to do this because it's not a long campaign game. So we wrote campaign rules that are in that book that nobody uses because why? Because
it's not a campaign game.
It's not a campaign game.
Yeah.
So anyways, those iterations very quickly changed how I looked at and designed games. I'm not saying for the better or anything like that.
Yeah, that's a trajectory.
That's the effect it had.
Yeah, I never had the super long-running campaigns, though it was like, kind of like the Holy Grail kind of like, or not the Holy Grail, it's kind of like the vision on the horizon, like, we can do this. But even as like, even in like middle school, high school,
a little bit of the alibi, right? We'll play this because we'll play this forever.
Yeah. And then you don't.
Yeah.
I had a friend who, we were both game nerds, but we were independent of each other until we were friends from doing theater stuff in high school. And he had like one of those Eternal games that like him and his like friends from like elementary school had been doing a D&D campaign for, at that point, years and years and years. And it was like, okay, that's how it's done. And things just never lined up that way for me and my friends. And like, that's fine. So it's out there. It exists.
Yeah, it exists.
I too go back to the same things over and over, but this is someone's first episode. One of my other formative things, in addition to getting involved with the indie game design scene and going to conventions, was also getting brought into a friend's GURPS group where they had multiple very long campaigns, but they would revolve whose game they were playing every couple months. So not each, but like 2 or 3 of the people in the group had a game that they ran, and everyone else had characters in that game. But we'd play that one for a couple, 3 months, kind of like a story arc. And then when that story arc ended, then the next person's game would start up again. So people were revolving through characters, but still doing the same. This was like I think it was Thursdays. This was like the Thursday night game, and like everyone went over to the same person's house every Thursday, and like,
that's fun. Yeah.
And it was great. It was super functional, and they're all really good friends. I mean, it's a friend group that I came into. I consider some of them friends now. Some of them I've lost touch with. But there's the core of like very good friends that have been doing this forever, kind of thing. And that was super influential for me to show the possibility of carving the short game out of the long game, right? Because like GURPS is like, it's a do whatever you want system.
Yeah.
But it is built for eternal progression, and you play and you gain XP and you level up and you get new stuff and you keep playing and you get more XP and you get new stuff. Like, it's an endless system progression.
Right.
But they narratively had created a very a shorter term horizon for each of their games. I was going to bring it up earlier also because talking about like system mastery and having other people who have it internalized.
Yes.
So like walking into that group and being like, if I have a rules question, I can ask literally anyone else at the table. I don't need to go to the GM every time, like that kind of thing. That was also like very good.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I mean, like there's a lot, this is kind of an aside, but there's a lot of different ways you can be a player that helps the game move along. Like I know we have in our culture this like, oh, the rules lawyer, whatever. But man,
the rules expert.
It's nice. It's good to have a rules expert on hand.
Yeah. Anyway, so in parallel to that, I'm also going to conventions and going through the same process of, in order to have my games work well in this context, they need to work as 4-hour convention games.
Yeah.
And having that turn into a default almost, even if it's not a game that is for playing as a one session game, how does this game work so that one session game is good and then continuing is optional?
Yes, we've achieved some sort of resolution at the end of the 4 hours or whatever. And also, I just want to point out that, like, at time of recording, that 4 hours seems like an eternity.
Oh yeah,
like now I'm like, we're gonna play for 2 hours.
Yeah, 2 hours.
Wherever we are, we're done.
Yeah. Yep.
But it was like 4 hours was
that was the convention slot. So that was what games started to get designed for. So so this is all, we're playing games at conventions in these convention slots that's going into our brains as part of the process of making our own games, which we are then going to bring to a convention and play in a convention slot. So that cycle, I wouldn't say it's not a virtuous cycle. It's a thing that happens. It's just like, it's a pattern. It is how it kind of drives a lot of the decision making. So
let's talk about how we've coped with that. Like what designs we've used to introduce to.
Yeah. So you brought up this idea a couple episodes back of the game where you hit the ground running from the beginning. You sit down to play, and what's the minimum, not necessarily the minimum time. I mean, you can talk about what you mean by that, but what that means to me is kind of like, we sit down, and then what's the shortest path from introducing the idea of the game to playing.
Right. Yeah. When you think, so when you design while also demoing it because there are conventions that are very friendly to you bringing games, works in progress and things like that.
Dreamation, for example, as mentioned earlier.
Yes. That whole suite of what are they, double exposure, I guess is the name. Yeah. They put on a bunch of games on the East Coast of the US that are very good for this. Each has their own different kind of atmosphere or whatever, but how they approach it. JiffyCon, which doesn't really happen anymore, but that was like a big one back in the day up here in Massachusetts, where people are expecting a game that's either a work in progress or fresh and new. They want to try something that like nobody else has seen before or whatever.
Yeah, Forge Midwest was kind of like that, kind of a combo where there are a lot of designers in the area, a lot of people interested in new stuff, but also if someone walked up and was like, I'm running Redbox D&D, there'd be like 6 people who were like, oh, awesome. And like, want to get in on that too. Anyway, hitting the ground running in these convention slots.
There are a couple of things at the very beginning and at the very end of the slot that I found that I wanted to hit. Like at the beginning, I wanted to I wanted to get the rules out so that I wasn't teaching them for the first time while we're playing. So I had to have like a rules pattern that was quick and early, because people, their eyes will glaze over. Yeah. Like you're hitting them with a lot of things. So you hit them with them. You explain what the emergent stuff you're expecting is like. If you're telling them that they get a bonus for doing this, explain that's why, like it's there because you want them to do that thing that they get the bonus. Like let them know. But you want that to be as short as you can with enough information for them to make choices about their characters, whatever choices you want them to do before the game begins. But immediately you could see, oh, now I'm going to start designing those early character creation choices, at least for my convention games, to be smaller and less comprehensive, because I don't want to have to teach all of the rules. You wouldn't do like a full point buy system out of Marvel Universe, although that's what I want when I sit down. But because there's a lot to ingest, so you start compacting that, right? Like you start finding what's the important bits.
I think there's maybe 2.5 paths. One is condensing or conceiving of the character as something that gets developed through play, as opposed to something that's established at the beginning of play. For Mask of the Mummy Kings, which is a hack/descendant of Swords Without Master, because this is kind of how it works in Swords Without Master. I just took even more rules out of Swords Without Master.
As you should.
Even your characters are there's a set of masks. They're half sheets of paper. You pick one for the left side and one for the right side, and they have some special rules on them, and that's your character. And this is a game that is designed to play in 2 hours and just be done. So, you don't need a lot of character fidelity, because the point of play is the things that happen. We don't learn about these characters. They don't have big backstories.
Right.
They're literally under masks, unknown even to each other.
Very true. Very true.
So that's one end. I'm just thinking about like the spectrum of my design. Like that's the farthest I've gone to, like, we're not even making characters.
Right.
So the other option is the or maybe the big horseshoe here is on the other end of that, which is also we're not even making characters, is doing pre-gens, right? Here's the pre-generated set of characters. They are optimized or oriented towards the game we're going to play. And part of the intro is explaining why you might want to choose one particular character, maybe. Like, this character's deal is this. So if you're interested in doing this in the game, pick them. But you're not necessarily going over, like, here's all their stats, like, from the beginning. And so that's what I do for Imp of the Perverse. Making characters in that game, I think, is really fun, but is a process. It's a life path process.
I love a life path, but it's a very lonely fun kind of thing, right?
It is fun to do as a group, but it does take, like, if you're in that 4-hour slot, like, it takes like that first solid hour to, like, actually do it.
Right. I guess what I was trying to say, like, whatever, this isn't like a truism or anything like that, but, like, one of the things I really enjoy about life path systems is the engagement of it. You can get into it independent of it's a mini game that you do. And like making characters in Burning Wheel works like that, where it's like you can take a couple hours and, like, agonize over each decision and, look at all of the options and figure out, which direction you want to go and stuff, completely independently of, like, am I ever going to play this game? Right. Yeah, exactly.
That's fine. Yeah. And then somewhere in the middle is the, archetypes, playbooks, style, and that's where Worldwide Wrestling lives. Pick sheets. Most of the stuff is on there, and you're making 4 or 5 individual decisions. The biggest decision you have to make is, like, what's my character's deal? Like, what's their actual, are they a space gladiator, or are they a peppy cheerleader? Like, what's their actual, like, small G gimmick? That's up to you. And their name and their entrance music, that's all up to you. And that's what takes the most time. And everything else is like, check this box, check this box, check this box. Those are my 2.5 directions.
Yeah. The clearest vision of it, or the clearest illustration of it in my own progression, was doing dread scenarios where in the beginning I would have bespoke 13 questionnaires for each character that people sat and filled out. There's not a whole lot, like, the rules of dread are easy to, like, convey right away. And then, like, filling out a questionnaire about your character doesn't take a lot of, like, it doesn't take any rule decisions, but it takes some time. And then I have to go through all those. And, like, over the years of running that game too many times, it just got to the point where when I went to run a game, I was like, okay, it's a zombie apocalypse. What's one thing you made sure you kept? And then you ask the next person a question. We ask, like, 2 questions that way. Every character gets 2 questions, and then we're off and running because we all know what a zombie apocalypse is like, and that's it, and like that was definitely I just kept feeling the pressure of getting to the game earlier and earlier, largely because I'm demoing the game, and I want the juicy moments of the demo are when people start pulling from the tower the first time. And so like I'm like, I want to get you to this one moment, and then once I get you there, I can relax and we can play. But like until we get there, I'm a nervous wreck.
So that's another question, is like, is a distinction without a difference, or is there something qualitative between running a demo at a convention and running your game or the game at a convention? And separate from, so there is one where, so like at the Forge booth, right, there was this idea of demos where like the 10-minute demo where someone could walk up and be like, what's the deal with Dread? And you could be like, oh, well, come over here. Here's the Jenga tower. It's a zombie apocalypse. You're running from zombies. Here's the situation. Pull. Right. Yeah. And like where you just drop someone in, and it's not about having a bunch of context. It's not about knowing all the rules. It's about getting to that, what's that juicy moment, as you said, of like, oh, this is why this game is cool, in order that they then will either be interested enough to like buy it or to go play it, quote, for real, because they had that little taste. So that's like a demo, and that's clearly a different thing, I think. But then when you're at the, like, we're at the convention, I'm scheduled in this slot, or I'm doing games on demand, and someone's picked my game, and we go and sit down, I don't think of those as demos, really. I wonder if that's just an accident of history, that's where that idea comes from.
It's a little, probably a little bit of an accident, because I like my early days, I just say contemporary with Forge, I was running the demos as 4-hour slots.
Right.
But yeah, there is a difference, I think, between here are the things you need to hit to see if you're at all interested.
Right.
And here is the now you're interested, you want to play the game, and I want you to walk away from it going, oh, that was a fun experience, right?
Yeah.
Even like that's what you want out of any game, whether you're selling it or not, right? Like,
right.
That was the experience I was looking for. I always use the word fun, but I know that some games that's not the point, and that's fine.
Yeah. I'm just articulating this now, but I think something that I aim to do with whatever game I run at a convention, one of mine or someone else's, or whatever, any game, is for it to be kind of like a highlight reel.
Yeah.
Even if the game has a broader play arc than you're going to capture in that 4-hour slot, to kind of be like, what's the good chunk of it? Like, what's the highlight of that thing? I'm trying to think of an example. When I was running the Clay That Woke last year, that's supposed to be a long game.
That's a campaign-y game.
That's a campaign-y game. And there's some things mechanically that you're not going to see until you've played for a little while, and there's a certain distribution of tokens that players have. And so you could artificially do that, be like, okay, we're playing, and your characters have already had these experiences, and you already have these tokens. But I don't know if that's necessarily a highlight, because you wouldn't know why that matters unless you played the earlier part. The things that I think are important to come away from playing that game is like doing the Crater of Lots and seeing how that works and being like, oh, that's super interesting. Having that sense of immersion in the world a little bit.
Yeah.
And getting a feeling of this is written in the book. Paul did a really good job of articulating this for the book. Kind of getting that sense of like, there's the city, the Green Gogolade, and there's the jungle. And there's stuff in the jungle that is not in the city. And Minotaurs go to the jungle, and then they come back. And that matters. And I think that is something that if I was going to run it again, I would try to push the session to having that be in it a little more.
Yeah.
When we played, we didn't get there, and that was fine. When I ran it at Big Bad, we got there right at the end, and that felt like the juice. And so now that I've done that, I'm kind of like, okay, next time I would try and get it so that we get there a little bit earlier, so we can see why it felt the way it did. I'm just kind of rambling now, but
no, that's good insight. Like, 'cause this is the kind of like post-mortem you do all the time, right? Like when you're running like a game you're designing, you're running in at think about like, oh, did we get to the thing? This also kind of plays into a thing that I was going to, because I mentioned earlier that there's like things I wanted to do at the beginning and at the end, and I hadn't mentioned what the end was.
Oh yeah, talk about the end.
And the end actually is all about this. You want at the end of the game to remind everyone of the fun that they've had. Mm-hmm. Like this, it's a cheat. It's not, but it's you. I want you to do this. Like if you're designing a game, find a way to make the end of the session, the end of the demo, whatever, look back on what had happened in a celebratory or just fun way.
Yeah.
You want people walking away from the table, that to be the last taste before they leave the table.
Yeah. It's kind of like if you're reading a book and you're in the middle of a chapter, as the author, I kind of want you to read all the way to the end before you put the book down, right?
Yeah.
If you're in the middle of the chapter and you're like, I'll come back to this later, that's not necessarily what I want. Like maybe whatever. I don't have control over that. But
yeah,
I'm trying to think of an example that isn't walking out of a movie in the middle of the movie.
Yeah. No, it's this thing where, especially, okay, I want to make just a very broad appeal to people who are playtesting their game, because quite often when you go to playtest your game, after you're done playing it, you're like, now give me the feedback. And you end up in this situation where the feedback is focused on things that might need a little tweaking or whatever. And what that means is the last memory that people have of this game is remembering the parts where the game wasn't that smooth. And it doesn't necessarily tank anything. Like that's not necessarily like, oh no, you've done a bad thing. I've been in many playtests where I'm like, oh, if you just work on this. And then when I saw the game coming out, I'm like, oh, this is exciting. But if, okay, I'm going to use some examples from games that I've designed, like Swords. Swords has those reincorporations at the end. Like you need to reincorporate, which means you got to think about the things that you've specifically said during the game were awesome, right? Like that were like, hey, this is a very sword and sorcery thing. You can't end the game unless you do that. That's a vital rule. Time and Temp did it where, as the GM, the general manager, when the temps came back from whatever their time travel trip was, I would sit them down with their immediate boss and they would do a debrief where the boss would go through and like basically point out all the ways they broke the rules.
Right.
Which is fun. It's a comedy game, right? Like this is this fun bit. And it also gets everyone on board with hating the boss, which is important. You have to hate the boss.
Yeah.
But anyways, like it got everyone thinking about the adventure they just had and the moments, the highlights of the moments that they did. And that's great. So like, even if it's as like, what's one thing your character learned this lesson, learned this time? Perfect. Wonderful.
And I think that's why a lot, if not all of my games have either an end game, like the game is over now, or a break point where it's like this arc, this beat is finished and there's a pause, and then the next, so Worldwide Wrestling, the episode is that, right? You play out an episode, you play out from the beginning of your wrestling show to the end of the wrestling show. That's a session. And then your next session, you're picking up the next one.
I will say, contrary to a lot of the stuff that I've said this episode, I would love to be in an eternal campaign of Worldwide Wrestling. Like, I think that would be just like a Sunday night.
Put that on the agenda.
I could play until the end of my days. Anyways.
So yeah, I think a lot of the games that have end games where it's like, and this game is over now, are coming out of the play culture of playing lots of convention games.
Yeah.
Or being like, this is a game that loses something, like that loses focus once it gets longer, is also potentially a reason to have those kinds of like, we're done now moments.
We've been at this for a while, and I feel like I'm
speaking of going long,
maybe we should talk about end games
as a separate thing.
Yeah,
we'll talk about end games another time as their own thing. I think that is a good call.
What's one thing you learned during this episode?
Well, I've learned about Marvel Universe and how much you love Stretchy Boys, which is something I did not know.
Oh, you didn't? Oh, okay. Well, that's something you now know about me. And so do you, dear podcast listener, and I apologize for that.
What is something that you have learned from this podcast so far?
Oh, what have I learned? I've learned about the difference between October and February, and I'm really excited about that. That's good. And I've learned that I want to, like, now that you mentioned, like, not to make this all about like, oh, I'm excited about your games or whatever, but now that you mentioned the life path, there's sort of a life path system in Imp the Perverse. I'm like, want to engage in that and spend some lonely fun. I could do that.
I will not tell you not to do that. Please have some lonely fun.
Yes.
I think I have also learned that this is a bigger topic than a single conversation is going to
cover.
So I'm sure we'll come back to this kind of stuff. But
we got good spin-offs here.
Yeah, but it's given us more to talk about next time, which is which is the goal. We always we want to come out of each of these with something to talk about for the next one.
Our eternal campaign.
As we've been saying, we have been running long in this convention slot, so it is time for us to say goodbye for now. So we will be back next time. This is, as I said at the beginning, and as you know from your podcast player, this is the Unwritten Earth Symposium podcast. It is a podcast by us. Go us. Our music is by Will Yobst, also the designer of Black Mass. Props to a real one. Is that a thing that people say?
Sure, they do now.
You can find Will on the internet and over at braintrust.rocks, where so Will and Adam Vass, a designer I've also been talking about, they've been talking about Kickstarter stuff and crowdfunding over on the Brain Trust podcast. And so if you are thinking about running a Kickstarter next year, because it's not, I mean, you can run a Kickstarter whenever you want, but because Zine Quest comes up, a lot of people launch things for zines. Yeah. They've done a series about both the logistical and emotional impacts of crowdfunding.
Oh, good.
Worth a listen. Big recommend from me. You can find more Unwritten Earth Symposium stuff at unwrittenearths.com. You can subscribe to our Patreon to get our second podcast, plus expenses, which we're going to go record after this one, over at patreon.com/unwrittenearths. And our annual is starting to come together. We have a link to the, speaking of Kickstarter, we have a link to the pre-launch page where you can subscribe to be notified over at unwrittenearths.com. So, and I'll put a link in the show notes, a direct link in the show notes as well. More about that soon.
Is that how we end these?
No, we end these by me saying, Epi.
Oh, right.
Have we designed a game yet?
No. Not yet. We'll get there. I believe in us.